Hello, everybody. Welcome to 4131. Today we got Mr. John Gallagher here from Black Sheep Recovery Warfare. He's got his own little podcast. We're gonna, dip into his life and what he's got going on today. So, welcome, John. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Right. And Happy Easter.
Happy Resurrection Day to you too, buddy.
Right. So, first off, just a little bit about yourself and where you come from, and
so we are based out of. The studio itself is in Madison, Mississippi. I live in Star, Mississippi, but the where my story revolves around is Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Mississippi, that's not too far away, right?
No, it was about a 4 to 4.5 hour drive, but I did it in 7.
Okay. Right, taking your time.
Yeah, I have my real ride or die spirit with me, so we stop a lot. We look at stuff, we stop and pray. If I see something, I squirrel out,
Right, he's got his dog with that spirit.
She's over here.
But look, just born and raised in Mississippi? Or?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi, South Jackson, Mississippi. No, I was born in Conroe, Texas, but I couldn't tell you anything about Conroe because I was about probably 3 months old when my family migrated to Jackson. But anyway, middle class family, church on Sunday, sprinkle some water on you, you're good to go. That was my exposure to Jesus and Christianity as a youngster. But I never applied anything to my life. I knew about Jonah, getting swallowed by a whale. I knew about Moses parting the Red Sea.
You'd heard all the stories, but you never could relate to what was going on.
I just never paid that much attention. I didn't apply. Again, I didn't have a relationship with Jesus.
So you was told about Jesus, but nobody showed you how to.
Yeah, I was exposed to it, but
never discipled. Mm-hmm. Right. So you've obviously used an addiction.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you what I was exposed to at a very young age was alcohol, and that was 11 years old.
11,
mm-hmm.
Right.
No, it was my grandfather. Not putting my grandfather thing. It was just the way that things worked out in my family. The boys hung out with Papa, and the girls hung out with Grandma, and Papa drank, so the boys drank.
Right.
And it was, back in the late 80s into the 90s, it was just, I think that was kind of common. And I think my grandfather, his outlook toward it was like, well, at least he's with me,
I get it.
But that was the way he was raised.
At least he had eyes on you.
He wasn't trying to harm me or anything like that. But, that came into play with addiction with me because I carried that into my social life with my younger friends and middle school, high school, and
Right. So
I had a very addictive personality.
Right. Well, I think we all have, the ones that, we're in addiction, we end up having an addictive personality.
For sure.
What you have to turn your drive towards,
Mm-hmm.
So you at 11, so how long were you in addiction?
Total? 34 years.
34 years. That's over half your life.
That's most of my life. I'm only 48.
Right.
So that's most of my life. Now there were gaps in there where a few months here, a few months there that I wasn't doing anything, but I was just tired of. I guess I'd get to a point where whether it was with my ex or something like that, we'd have a big blow up, and then you have to drink or I'm leaving, or you have to stop or I'm leaving. So I'd be good for a couple of months here and there.
Right. So you weren't doing it for yourself. You was doing it
just to make somebody else happy.
Right. People pleasing.
It wasn't like I woke up one day and said, I'm not an alcoholic anymore, or I'm not a meth head. I don't want to smoke crack today.
Right.
Wasn't like that. But nobody what wakes up and wants to be a drug addict,
no, definitely not.
But, you think you have control over all those things until you don't,
Right.
But with me, I was in the Navy and not for a very short period of time, but that carried me to the West Coast, and I figured out that it didn't matter where I was. I would conform socially to the people I was surrounded by, the way they talked, the way they dressed, everything, the drugs they were doing, and so I would start doing those drugs, and so I wouldn't just do the drugs they were doing. I would try to do more of the drugs that they were doing. Like if it was on the menu, I was doing it, but I'm gonna do more than you.
Right. I kind of relate to that, but my thing was I would find out what they were doing and then try to turn money on it.
Oh, yeah. Now, sure. Absolutely.
Right. So you sold drugs?
Different period, different stages in my life. Like when I was 17, me and my best friend, like he graduated, but I dropped out of high school, so he had bought this house. So they didn't call them trap back then. Trap houses back then, we called it the Dove Shack. And so we were slinging weed, LSD, cocaine, whatever we can get our hands on out of that house. 17, 18 years old, until it got hot, and that's really kind of what drove me into the military. I was kind of out of desperation, didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I thought going into the military, this might straighten me out, No,
so did you ever at any point think, hey, this is not what I want to do? Or did it just come natural to you? Or
here's the thing. So I was good at starting things. I wasn't good at finishing them. I was kind of a quitter.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how many jobs I've had in my life. I would love them at first, but then I'd get bored with them. And it'd be time to move on. And so, like, there was a period where I was on the towboats for about 5 years.
Right.
Got sick of that, moved on to something else. So there's been most of my work-related jobs was service industry.
Right, okay.
Which I think is kind of goes hand in hand with what I do now, is because I serve so much. I think I'm just a born server. Does that make sense?
I mean, that's what we're called to
exactly.
do anyway.
Because
we're looking for that piece in us that's missing, and we're to serve others. And if we don't have God in us, then we're serving the wrong one.
Amen. You can't serve two masters. You
right.
love one or hate the other.
Right.
But like, so I had, I don't know, 50 to 100 restaurants I worked in, but I would get fired from them because I would just be so high. They figure it out, And there's a big drug culture in the waiting tables experience.
Yes, there is.
And so it didn't matter. You could put me anywhere in a restaurant and I would thrive. I could be in the back of the house, front of the house, bartending, whatever. And I really thrived as a server. I did, when I was waiting tables, when I was a server, and I'd make buku. I did very well. My tips were always great. It always came naturally to me.
Right.
But again, it would last anywhere from 6 months to a year, and my addiction would get me fired, or I would quit, or I'd move to another, location, or another state, or whatever. Again, I've lived all over the country.
Okay, so all right, so you got that far. You're serving the wrong one. Oh, yeah. So what was your breaking point? What did actually, right before you was given the vision of your podcast?
So things started taking a downward spiral. I was in a relationship for about 12 years, with a woman who is now my best friend. And I destroyed that relationship. I wrecked it with a pornography addiction.
Okay.
And also a drug addiction. I was heavy on the meth, and other drugs. So that's kind of.
I think the porn and meth comes hand in hand.
They do, for certain. Those two demons hang out a lot.
Right. Yes.
So
if it's not the same one,
it's lust.
Right.
And so with that pornography demon, it goes along with having affairs and things like that. It all goes hand in hand with the methamphetamine. There's just something in meth. I don't know. Right. But that was the catalyst that ended that relationship. At about the same time, I'd lost my mother and my father to cancer. So I just got, it was a downward spiral. It started with death and grief, with the ending of that relationship, death and grief, and I just kind of gave up. Just didn't really care about anything. Got really numb to life.
Okay.
And so at this point in my life, I was in and out of jail a lot. Nothing too, nothing felonious yet. But I was racking up some misdemeanor stuff, and just getting worse and worse and worse. It all came to a head though when I lost my little sister. I lost my little sister to a fentanyl overdose, which at the time I was in rehab.
Okay.
And I'd made up my mind going into rehab that this was it. I'm going to get clean, and I'm going to do the thing, and I'm going to rebuild my life. I'm going to start my life. I'm going to start it at ground zero. We're going to start over. And what brought that on though was multiple overdoses. I couldn't tell you how many times I developed a IV meth and heroin and fentanyl addiction. I'd only been in that part of my addiction for about a year I'd only been using needles for about a year and 8 months or so. Like, mostly meth until my sister started using fentanyl and heroin, and then I found out she was using fentanyl and heroin, and that made me want to use fentanyl and heroin. And when I did, she was right. I would love it, and it was probably going to kill me, and it did. It killed me numerous times. I don't know how many times that I was resuscitated, woke up in showers that with cold water. With the cold water turned on, woke up in ERs being hit with Narcan multiple times. But I do know that my sister broke my sternum 3 times. That's the only number I can come up with. I know that she broke my sternum 3 times.
That's
it was
you're
serious.
really lucky. So God's had His hands on you.
I can tell you
so
that
you've had a purpose call. You've had a calling and a purpose for a long time.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because in that relationship I was in with my best friend for those many years, and even before, I would go to church. I would go because she would drag me, and it would just shut her up. I didn't want to go.
Right.
But sometimes my heart would get pricked, and I would catch something out of the sermon that would speak to me, and so I've always known that there was a God.
Right.
And I've always believed that Jesus was real. But randomly, sometimes God would put somebody in my path. I don't know if it would be an angel or a human that He was speaking through, but they would come up to me and they would put their hand on me and say, God told me to tell you that He has a huge purpose for you and a calling on your life. And I, at first, at the time I was like, this is what you cult members tell people to get them in your cult.
It's just another Bible thumper. Right.
But listen, after my radical encounter with Christ, man, He brought all those instances into remembrance to me because I asked Him to. I was like, man, God, it says in your word, you never know when you're entertaining angels and things like that. He's like, can you show me in my life anytime that you sent anybody in my path? And sure enough, I'd start having these random memories that all these brain cells I've killed, but I'd never be able to remember,
Right.
I mean, you can't tell me that there's not a God, man. You just can't, because I've had so many since my radical encounter.
But your radical encounter started out. Tell me a little bit about this.
Okay.
Tell me about this radical. And I'm a little intrigued now.
Sure. My sister had died. I was on my 27th day in rehab. And I was doing all the things. I was enjoying the program. It was not faith based. It was originated over in Mendenhall. I was enjoying the classes. I was getting into them. I was doing all the work. I was going to all the meetings. I was watching all the movies.
You wasn't just faking it.
No,
you was actually doing steps.
I wanted to change my life.
Right.
I did.
Okay.
And on the 20, I'd already had my secondary set up to go to, and I was almost to my 30th day of, and then I would go immediately into secondary.
Right. So how long was this rehab that you was in, though?
So the first part of it was 30 days.
Okay.
And then the secondary, I think, was 6 months, maybe. It could have been a year. I don't remember.
So you was fixing to transition.
I was about to transition into secondary.
Okay.
Right. And I was on my 27th day, and they came and pulled me out of class and told me that my little sister had died from a fentanyl overdose.
Tough.
And when they told me that, something inside me just broke.
Right.
That was my true breaking point. So in that moment, the darkness just consumed me, and I asked for it. I wanted it. I didn't try to. I just gave up completely.
Right, well, you was wanting to go back to what was comfortable.
Oh yeah, I wanted to go back to my no car, my no job, my no license.
Yeah, of course.
All that, all of those things.
Right? Why not?
Yeah, 13 out of 10 don't recommend.
I lost everything else. Why not?
Yeah. Let's just do it right this time. Right. 13 out of 10 I do not recommend anything I'm about to tell you what I went and did. But I contacted somebody to come pick me up, and I instructed them to have a needle with as much dope as they could get into it to be on standby in the car, because I was going to be high before I pulled out of that parking lot.
Right.
And man, I went back in that classroom, and I told these guys that I'd gotten so close to, that we had been pouring into each other for about 27 days. I said, listen, my sister just passed away. I have to go deal with this. I don't want to leave, but I have to. I said, but I'm good. I'm going to be back. And I knew that every word that was coming out of my mouth was a lie.
Right.
And
right. So did anybody try to keep you to stay? Did anybody try to talk to you and get you to stay?
I mean, your sister just died. You got to go. you know.
Yeah.
So they didn't know that I had a needle on the way, but I did, and I knew that I was lying to these guys.
Right.
And I'll never forget this as long as I live. But all of these guys stood up in that classroom and clapped for me, and it made me sick feeling, you know.
Right.
So she got there. I left before she was even out of the parking lot. I had a vein popped. It was on.
Right.
And that started, and that's when the
So you
darkness.
could have died right there in that parking lot that right then.
Well, this was methamphetamine. This wasn't.
I got you.
So, but it was probably one of the biggest shots I think I'd ever done. And I think she knew I wanted that. But anyway, so I was consumed by the darkness again.
Right.
Wanted to die. Didn't want to live anymore. Didn't have anybody. And just went back to the streets of Jackson, Mississippi. I'm wandering, trap house, hotel room to hotel, motel room to motel room,
Right.
dumpster, whatever, just whatever.
Yeah, because you don't want to be out front in front of everybody. You want to be hid inside.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I'm wandering. All hours of the night. The streets are quiet. In those nights, man, I know that God was breaking through that, and He was shining. It doesn't matter how far you go into the darkness, man. If God looks down from His throne and sees you and looks at you and says, "I want that one," He's gonna get you.
Yeah, he's lit up, right?
He's gonna get you. So He's gonna cover you in protection. No matter. I mean, I remember I went down some streets where there'd be gang members everywhere. Pit bulls growling at each other, and I'd walk by, and it was just like I was invisible. It's like I paid them no mind. It's like I didn't exist. It was
right.
Really,
They didn't
plus,
see you at all. Right.
At this point, I'm in a deep, very deep psychosis. If you ever seen one of those guys arguing with a stop sign or just rumbling, ripping through a garbage bag on the side of the road, that was me. I was completely out of my mind, completely. But that's where I was at.
Right. And then what happened? So you got locked up?
So, not yet. Not yet. This went on for several months. I was on a suicide mission, and I mean, it was really weird because I was seeing illuminated crosses in places they shouldn't be. People. I'll never forget this as long as I live. It was probably about 2:00 in the morning. I had nowhere to go. I just pulled up some puddle water out of a pothole and took a big shot. And I'm walking down the front.
Wait. You did what? You pulled a puddle water?
Puddle water out of Jackson, Mississippi, out of a pothole.
Like rainwater out of a
pothole. Oh, yeah. I was
so
like
you
that.
was doing whatever it took.
Oh, yeah.
And didn't care.
Probably the 12th time I used the same needle, too. It was bad.
Oh, so bad.
Yeah, it was so bad. Yeah. But so I'm walking down the frontage road, high out of my mind, about 2:00 in the morning. And a bad thunderstorm is brewing up just out of nowhere. And off in the distance, I see this guy walking. I mean, the city's dead. There's nothing going on except for this thunderstorm that's blowing up. And I can see off in the distance this guy walking toward me. And I'll never forget, he had on a red jumpsuit. And he walks up. We get close enough to each other. He hollers at me. He says, "Hey, you got a lighter?" And I'm like, "I think I do. Yeah, I have one." I gave him a light. And it turned out I had 2 lighters. And he said, "I'm on my way to the store to get this lighter." So, I said, I remember I said that, well, the one you're about to walk to is closed. So he's like, "Do you have anywhere to go?" And I was like, "No, as a matter of fact, I don't." He said, "Follow me." So he never did anything with this lighter, okay? Which I thought was weird. I didn't think about it the same. So we're talking all the way. He leads me into this apartment complex. He said, "Listen, what I'm about to show you, you can't tell anybody about. This is just for you." So he takes me through this maze of these apartments. Up a couple levels, down.
And you're
through
not thinking nothing about it.
I'm
You're
high to my mind, dude. I'm high. And,
good times.
Oh yeah, I can tell you that this. I had on the same clothes for about 10 days. Probably been awake for 7 of those 10 days.
Right.
Haven't eaten, no water. I mean, just wasting away. Just existing. But he walks up. They get to this door of this apartment, and he says, "Listen, nobody lives in this apartment, okay?" He said, "But you can go in here, get you some rest, get you a shower, and stay here as long as you need to." Get you some rest, and just don't tell anybody about it. So I go to twist the knob, and the door is locked. Okay?
Right.
It's locked. I twisted it. I remember it very vividly. And I looked at him, and I said, "It's locked." He put his hand on the door, just his hand on the door, and I heard a click, and then he pushed it. The door opened. So I go in this apartment, and I close the door, and the only thing that's in this apartment is in the bathroom. There's one towel, a bar of soap, and some 3-in-1 like shampoo, conditioner stuff. That's it.
That's set up, man. Like,
very supernatural thing.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I don't know why I shared that, but I did. But anyway,
right.
So anyway, my arrest. All right, so not long after that, that was just God, man. That was just God providing.
Right.
He knew I knew,
That was orchestrated before you got there.
So I ended up getting that shower and laying down on the floor in the carpet, and I don't know how long I slept, but when I woke up, I left, and and the rain had passed. It was over with. But anyway, so this went on for several months, psychosis, darkness, and I'm wandering through the woods behind a friend's property, same woman that picked me up with the shot from rehab.
Right.
She had some little chunk of land over there, and I find this gigantic oak tree, and in front of this oak tree, it's a big opening, and it's hollowed out. So I'm high, and I crawl in this oak tree, and I can literally stand up in this oak tree, and inside this oak tree, I came face to face with this demon, and it could have been the psychosis, I don't know, but I think it was a demon. I say it's a demon.
Right,
but
right.
Whatever
To you,
it was,
that's what it was.
Whatever it was in my ear, and it was telling me that you are going to commit suicide in this tree, which every other time I'd had an overdose, there would be somebody that had gotten involved to, the Narcan, my sister.
Somebody was there to bring you out of it.
Whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the devil knew that nobody was going to find me in this tree. So I crawled out of the tree. I made a phone call. I made arrangements, and I got my friend to take me to my storage unit to meet this person. She's going to drop me off. And on the way, she stops at this store. And inside this store is this young lady. This young lady, I have not said this, but at this point, I hadn't seen my daughter or talked to her in about 3 years.
Okay.
And when I got to my storage unit, which was behind my ex's residence, I was going to write 2 letters. I was going to write one to my daughter, and I was going to write one to her. And both of them are pretty much going to be the same. They're going to be lies. Y'all are better off without me. I'm leaving the state. Don't look for me.
Right.
Just going to be lies. And anyway, this young lady in front of me, she turned around and struck up this conversation with me. Which, if you can imagine what I looked like, the state I was in, I looked like a zombie. I looked like I was already dead. If you ever see my mugshot, you'll get it. But I looked insane, plus I was in psychosis. Right. And she just struck up this conversation, and she looked and sounded exactly like my daughter. To be honest with you, I don't even know if this person was actually there. I could have been imagining this.
That's how bad you was.
Yeah, I couldn't say for sure if this person was even actually there.
Right.
So, so she pays her stuff. We're laughing and cutting up. You got to understand, this 17-year-old girl, 45-year-old drug addict. There's
something's not right.
Yeah,
there's no common ground for her to even talk to you.
Why would she strike up a conversation with me? I think that God just did that.
Right.
Just to distract me from what I was doing. And we serve a great big God, dude.
There's no telling. Right.
So anyway, she walks out. There's this backpack left right there. I look over my shoulder, and I see her rooting through a little PT Cruiser, a little car. And I assume that this backpack belongs to her. So I take the backpack out to her, and I ask her if it belonged to her. And she said, "Oh, no, it's not mine." And at this point, my friend is ready to go. She's getting in the car. "Come on, let's go." And me being homeless, I'm used to having 2 or 3 backpacks.
Right.
So I'm like Dora. I'm like, backpack.
Yeah, this mine. I already got my hands on it. Right.
Sling it over my shoulder. I'm not even thinking about it. I just sling it over my shoulder.
Right.
Without paying, and just get in the car and leave. Now, we do get down the road about a mile or 2, and I realize, oh, I've got this backpack. It does not belong to me. And she's like, "Well, we'll just drop it off on the way back." And then I'm just like, you know what? A couple hours, I ain't going to be alive anyway. Whatever. So she gets me in my storage unit. And when I get out, for whatever reason, I grab the backpack. And then she leaves, and I'm waiting on my dude. And within minutes, I'm surrounded by Richland and Pearl cops at my storage unit. There's like 7, 8 cruisers. And I'm telling you, guns drawn, get on the ground. Next thing I know, I've got my arms jerked behind me, knee in my back,
right.
Guns in my face. "Where's the backpack?" And I'm like, what is in this backpack? My first thought, my first thought was they think I'm breaking into the storage unit. So I'm hollering, I'm screaming, this is my storage unit. And it was, where's the backpack? And I'm like, oh my God, what is in this backpack? I never looked in it.
Right.
You know, that was one thing about me about being a meth head. I never was a thief. You know, I mean, I wasn't that type of meth head.
Right. Until that day.
Well, inadvertently.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But, so anyway, they get me in the car. Turns out the backpack has an iPad mini in it and a receipt printer from a Red Bull rep that was dropping off his load. So it wasn't hard to find me because it was an Apple iPad that was powered up, and it was like, they got you. I mean, it was that quick.
Right.
So I had to serve a year over that. But before that, I'm on. They're transporting me to the holding cell over in Richland, Mississippi, and I was infuriated because I knew that God had every bit of everything to do with this.
He stopped you from going back to that tree.
Well, he didn't stop me. He set me up. I got set up by God, man. He set me all the way up. I'm talking about threw a charge on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I'm grateful for.
Okay, come on.
So he got me. They got me back into the cell, and it's not me that's really infuriated. I think it's just the demons. You know, because they were trying to take me out.
Yeah.
You know, they had already taken out my sister. They're trying to get me too. You know. Plus, I think demons know. They know when somebody has a high calling on them or something.
Yeah,
when they have
a
purpose.
That's the ones that.
So that's the ones that get the
most,
biggest
right?
targets on. You know. So they were really trying to get me. But anyway. So they get me back to the cell, and I start cursing God, and they start cursing God, and they start cursing the Son. And I think out of desperation, I was allowing, or not even fighting it, because I just, I was just hoping that he would just throw a lightning bolt into that cell and just take me out. Because, again, I didn't have anything to live for, or I thought I didn't. But what happened was he did show up. He showed up in the cell. God showed up, or Jesus showed up in the cell. And the power, it was so powerful. It was so thick. It was so intense that it put me on my knees, and it nose to the concrete. And I felt arms wrap around me. And you got to understand, at this point in my life, I had not felt the touch of another human in a very long time.
Right.
I had no love, nothing. And when I felt that hug, I knew that it was Jesus. And it's just a knowing, it's just a knowing, and it's Jesus. And the only way I've been able to find to describe it to anybody is that it's like being hugged by everyone you've ever cared about and loved in your life. Right. Everybody that's ever loved and cared about you and your life all at the same time. And it flooded every cell in my body. It flooded every vein. It all flooded into my heart. And when it did, it hit my eyes, and I started crying. And it was ugly crying too.
Right.
I bet you I hadn't cried in years.
Right. You hid all those emotions for so long.
Yeah, I'd been numb for so long. You got to think, for 3 decades of drug use and alcohol abuse and all the things. And and again, psychosis, and I was out of my mind. I was insane. So you got to remember that.
Right.
And so you can imagine all the things I was saying to the cops, it's just ridiculous things, demons everywhere. This is crazy.
Right.
But so they're like, this guy's got to go too.
Yeah, they're going to put him in the padded room
in
a
a
turtle
straight
shell.
jacket.
Right.
Yeah. So, but in that moment, when it was over, so like now I'm of sound mind, like talking like I am talking to you right now.
So you was delivered right there.
I mean, I was healed, and look, when they were transporting me to Rankin County Jail, I was smiling from ear to ear. Best day of my life. That was the best day of my life.
Locked up.
Amen. And that's my arrest story. That's my deliverance story.
Right.
And a lot happens after that, But I spent a year in prison. I had some very supernatural things I could share, but we could be sitting here talking for a very long time. But I did.
I'm sure you talk about that on your podcast.
I do. Yeah, right. You can, for your viewers and your listeners, man, y'all can find Black Sheep Recovery Warfare podcast on all podcast platforms like iHeart, Apple, Spotify. We have a YouTube channel. We have a website, blacksheeprecovery.warfare.org. I think that's it. You know, we have a TikTok and Instagram, a Facebook page.
Right.
We have a whole ministry. We're a 501(c)(3). But yeah, that's what we do. Is we do the same thing you do. We take people and we let them share their stories of how they were lost in the darkness of addiction, and how Jesus stepped into their lives and transformed them.
That's what we're about up here. Is, you know, just letting folks know it's okay not to be okay, and that we do recover.
Yeah,
you know?
and I think it's important that you recover out loud, because the thing that we stand on at Black Sheep is Revelation 12:11. It's like people will overcome by the power of their testimony and the blood of the Lamb. And I think the more people share their testimonies, and you know, that's how the idea for the podcast really came. So I was getting close to getting released from prison, and you know, again, you know, the prisons are full of, you know, drugs, you know, flooded.
Yes,
and I kept my nose buried in my Bible. You know?
There's more easier access to
Without
it.
a doubt.
It just costs more. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. And so, you know, it was there every day. It was offered, but I had no desire for it. That's another thing that the Lord did for me, was He took the desire for it, and He took the taste out of my mouth. I mean, you could put a bowl right here full of dope, and you could put 3 lines of coke out. You could put crack rocks on this table, and it would not even bother me.
Right.
And so whatever. It's like, and that's how it was in prison. But I studied the Word. I hung out with Jesus. I developed a relationship, and then He started talking to me. Like in the quiet of the night, He told me, "You just be, you know, faithful to me, and you trust me, and be obedient to me, and I'll give you a platform. I'll give you a podcast." And at this point, I'd never even listened to a podcast. I knew what a podcast was.
I understand.
I'd never listened to one. I've been high for 30 years.
Right.
So I was like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" So I get out, I get involved with Celebrate Recovery, and I start seeing all these amazing testimonies, and they move me. These powerful testimonies. I'm like, I was like, this is what you want me to do. I mean, it's great that there's 5 people in here, or 20 people, or 30 people, or whatever. But man, if we can get this out there to
as many people as
we can to get eyes on it, you know, this could hit somebody's. I mean, I just got a message the other day on TikTok from a guy in Michigan. He's like, man, I saw a clip. I went and watched the full episode, and I was about to commit suicide. I was like, whoa.
Right. You never know who's watching you. That's what we tell people up here, you know, and as far as, you know, our worship in our daily life, just living a godly life, you know, trying to make it through, but it's our testimony.
Yeah.
That touches others, you know, and you never know who's watching.
I know.
You never know who's watching.
Yeah, and I have a passion for it, man. God gave me a passion for it, a desire to do it. And that's what we do, man. And you know, we're growing. You know, we're about 1.5 years old, I think. We've got 45 episodes in. We've interviewed Brian Headwelt from Korn. You know, we've had ASAP.
I used to listen to Korn in my days. You know what I'm saying?
He still plays with Korn. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And I love Brian, man. He's, you know, that was a phenomenal thing to get to interview somebody that you idolized when you were in your darkness. You know,
right.
See him come to Christ. Wow, what an amazing story, right? Had all the money, all the fame, all that stuff, and that just didn't fill him. It didn't fill that hole, you know. You would think, you know, man, if you would have given me the resources Brian Welch had in my darkness, man, I'd be dead. But you know, man, I think addicts, man, are God's chosen people, man. It's just,
He chooses broken people, and thank God He does.
But think about it. Think about it for a second. If you look at Philippians chapter 4, man, I was just reading it yesterday. That it was talking about being content in any situation. Man, can you remember all those situations that you were in your darkness, the situations and living situations that you could get used to, you know, and be content with it? Now think about your situations now. So rewind that, bring that back. Okay. So we're conditioned for it, you know, we're conditioned for it. So like now, it's like back then, you know, we're staying in trap houses with no power, no water, no whatever. You know, we got drugs, we got the things, you know, we desire, whatever. But now, you know, like the power goes off now, like from a tornado wind gust or something. And we're like, we're good.
There's no worry in that.
We are conditioned for it, though.
Right.
Man. But another reason why I think that addicts are God's chosen people, man, is because, again, we were trained. You know, we were trained to the darkness. We know the darkness. We know all the devil's lies and his traps and his snares, and we can see it coming a mile away.
Right.
I think most of us that come out, you know, on the other end alive and on fire for Jesus, we're just conditioned for it. You know, to a life of servitude to Jesus, man.
Right. So would you change anything you ever went through?
Absolutely not.
Right.
No.
Definitely.
Not a thing. No.
Yeah, so I've had people ask me that before, and I'm like, yeah, no.
Wouldn't change a thing.
Wouldn't change nothing.
Do I have regrets though? Yes. There's a lot of people.
There's some regrets, but would I change it?
There are a lot of people that I hurt. But again, you know, I've had so much restoration, dude, that I shouldn't have, man. It's only supernatural restoration, man.
Right.
Like
there's nothing that you've
done.
Man,
my nephew. Let me tell you what I did to this kid. So after my sister died, I didn't know what to do. And I walked out of rehab. Well, I didn't have two nickels to rub together.
Right.
How was I going to bury her? How was I going to cremate her?
Right. Why was you even leaving? Right.
But so at the time he was 17, just turned 18, man. And so a couple of my sister's friends approached me and said, "Hey, Amanda had a lot of friends. Do a Facebook fundraiser." And I did. And this Facebook fundraiser quickly grew to over $1,000.
Right.
Those same two friends approached me and said, "Hey, let's take that $1,000. Let's get a couple ounces of dope in a motel room, and let's triple that. Then
let's try to flip it.
Let's try to flip it, and then you'll have plenty of money to live on and enough money to cremate her." And it sounded like a great idea at the time.
Right.
Until they ran with it, until they stole it. And then I had to call my nephew and tell him this. Right. And I didn't lie to him. I was honest. I told him exactly what happened. And out of anger, you know, he said, I mean, he wanted to end me.
Right.
You know, he wanted to unalive me, and rightly so.
Right.
He just lost his mother.
Right.
His little brother is autistic and is barely verbal, you know. So she left two sons on this earth, and then I did that. Right. So imagine how he felt.
Right.
Until a couple years ago, God created some circumstances where he had no choice but to reach out to me for help. And he knew what was going on in my life, you know. But he was caught in a situation where he needed help, and he reached out, and he did not want to. He did not want to call me.
Right.
And he called me, and we had I went and picked him up. He was about an hour and a half away from me. I went and picked him up. And we didn't talk about it at first. You know, it took a couple of days. It was very awkward. And then he sat down next to me and we talked. And it's been a lot of talks ever since. But that was listen, I never thought that would happen. And now him and I are just like this.
Right.
And he calls me all the time. He calls me for advice. Doesn't know, I don't know what to do about this. Can you help me? What, you know.
Right. Yeah. So God has restored all kinds of relationships.
Yeah. Right. And that's just one example. I could share more, but I know you're probably, I don't even know how long we've been sitting here.
Yeah, right. I don't either. You know, we got stories we could talk for days.
Oh, for sure.
You know, so Black Sheep Recovery, Warfare Recovery.
Yeah, you can find
podcast.
Us. You can find us at Black Sheep Recovery Warfare Podcast. You can either Google that and look for this ugly
Black
logo.
Sheep.
You can just look for that ugly logo. We're on Spotify. We're on iHeart, Apple. We're on several podcast platforms. You can find the TikTok, you can find the Instagram, the Black Sheep Recovery Warfare Facebook page, and the YouTube channel is my favorite.
Right. So if there's one thing you could tell somebody out there who might be listening or watching, just give them whatever.
Here lately, my favorite thing has been God. You know, God. My timing sucks. God's timing is perfect. So I lean on it. If you're waiting on something that you feel like God promised you, or you're just waiting on some type of restoration or forgiveness with somebody or from somebody, I want you to lean on Isaiah 60:22. And what it says is, I say at the Lord, when the time is right, I will make it happen.
Amen. Amen. We love y'all. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Pleasure. Been an awesome pleasure. So y'all come check out these other videos we have. Thank you guys. We love you. Jesus Christ loves you. Y'all have a blessed day.